Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. This is my channel's weekly compendium, ending Monday, November 21st, 2022. Case file number 831, written by Remote Control Raccoon. Remember that time we teleported? I was recently on call with my mother, and without prompting, she brought up this glitch. This story is about 5 years old now, give or take a few months. For a while, I thought maybe I had dreamed it or something, but my mom corroborated my story. I was 18 at the time, and it was my first Thanksgiving that I wasn't in school. My mom and I were taking our usual 7-hour trip up north. On holidays like this, it was more like 9 hours, to our family in New Jersey for the holiday. We used to live up there, and since moving down south, we made, and still make, the trip up north about 4 or 5 times a year. Needless to say, we are abundantly familiar with the interstate. We're abundantly familiar with the entire route, to be honest. The way we always go is by taking Route 64 to 295 before getting on the interstate, the beautiful I-95. It sucks, it is always filled with traffic, so naturally the two of us leave at ungodly hours in the morning. This doesn't bug either of us, really, because we both wake up early anyway. So this trip started off like any other. We were out the door by 6:15, had our Chick-fil-A in hand by 6:30, and we were filled up on gas and on the road by 7 or so. The first part of the trip was fine. We put on music, talked about random stuff, and gossiped as mothers and daughters do. By the time we got to the 295 exit, it was still fairly early, but both of us were wide awake. She took the exit and we were set. The road looked as it always did and nothing was out of the ordinary. After a few minutes of driving though, something felt very wrong. Gone were the multiple lanes of the highway. We were now on what looked to be a country road. It cut through a cornfield and only had one lane of traffic in either direction. We were, as far as either of us could see, the only ones driving on that stretch of road. There was a little farmhouse on our right, but that's about all. My mom and I were both really taken aback because we had just been on the highway. Neither of us had noticed any exits, nor had my mom gotten off at the wrong one. We had been on 295, and then suddenly we weren't. My mom tried to rationalize it at first, saying that she probably wasn't paying attention because she had a bit of a headache forming and had just gotten off at the wrong exit. At the time, I agreed with her, but something felt very, very off, and suddenly the Chick-fil-A breakfast wasn't sitting so well anymore. There weren't any signs for directions, only a few speed limit signs as we kept going. When I looked at the dashboard clock, too, only a minute or so had gone by. By the looks of it, we were in the middle of nowhere, Virginia. Time to me didn't seem to match up, but I just felt weird and dizzy at that point. My mom decided to keep driving forward. I don't know why she didn't just do a U-turn so we could go back, but she's always been the one to prefer to get actual directions. We didn't have cell service either, so that may have been why. That's pretty normal for rural Virginia though. I work on a haunted farm during the Halloween season, so I'm pretty used to spotty reception. Corn stalks do not a cell tower make. Well, we kept on driving. We came to what I guess was the census-designated place's idea of a town. By this I mean there was a service station and a church. We stopped the car, they filled us up, and my mom asked for directions. The guys were pretty nice, your typical laid-back Southerners. They did tease my mom for her New York accent, though. When we explained that we'd gotten turned around coming off 295, they looked really surprised. The younger of the two guys said that, coming from the direction we had, we were driving towards 295 north, not away from it. That really threw us for a loop. They asked if we'd ever done this trip before, if we were new to Virginia, etc. And were very shocked when we said yes, we've taken this trip many times before. We all got quiet after that, and my mom and I got back in our car and drove another 20 minutes to get back on the highway. Once we were back en route, the pit in my stomach went away. Neither of us really talked about it anymore, and we didn't mention it to our family once we got to Jersey. I've thought about this experience a lot since it happened, though. I tried to rationalize it, but the more I think about it, the weirder it gets. Sure, plenty of people make driving mistakes when they're tired, but my mom and I had both had our coffee, and we were both well rested. What really trips me up is how we were driving towards 295 and not away from it, and how far away from the exit we were on that country road. That and how little time had passed between being on the interstate and then not being on the interstate. Like I said though, I thought maybe I'd just dreamt it. I was on the phone with my mom yesterday though, and she brought it up out of nowhere. I guess she was thinking about it because we're trying to decide what to do for Thanksgiving. She asked if I remembered that time we teleported, which is a very funny way to start a conversation, but then she got serious and said that it had freaked her out. She recounted the events almost exactly how I did, except she did say there was a sign along the country road pointing towards the service station. Regardless of what actually happened, it was a bizarre and jarring experience. At least it taught me to always appreciate friendly gas station employees. Creepy file number 63, written by Need a Redesign. Videos tell 1,000 words. This happened 5 years ago, when I was 19. I was studying in a college town and sharing an apartment with Emma. Emma was a year older than me, and even though we didn't know each other before becoming flatmates, we quickly became friends. One day, she told me she had to go to the art school where she was studying to bring home some pieces she needed to work on. She told me she could use an extra pair of hands, so I went with her. The school is located on a small square in a pedestrian zone. We went, grabbed what she needed, and left. We were heading out of the square and towards our apartment, distracted by the conversation, when Emma tapped my shoulder. I look at her and she points to our right. There's a man there. He's recording you. I turn my head and there he is, a man in his 40s, pointing at us with his cell phone. He wasn't even trying to hide it. I immediately start walking in his direction, and Emma follows me close behind. I know you were recording or taking pictures of us, and I want you to delete it right now, I said. He started laughing and pretending not to speak my language. Okay, no worries, I'll repeat it in English for you. Delete the damn video. He laughed again and told me he wasn't doing anything wrong. I was having none of it. My blood was boiling at this point, and with the rush of adrenaline, I snatched the phone out of his hand. I opened the gallery and, of course, there I was. A video mostly zoomed in on my chest area. Not that it matters, but I was wearing a top without a bra. I delete it, and before me appears what seems to be a similar video of another woman. Before I have time to react, he snatches the phone again, looks at me with a grin on his face, and tells me, "Don't worry, I have more women there." I was very shaken up, about to burst into tears, and decided to just turn around and walk home with my friend. In hindsight, I know this could have ended badly for me. He could have gotten violent when I took his phone. But part of me regrets not smashing it on the ground when I had the chance. A few months after this encounter, it made it to the news that a man had been recording women on the street of my city and uploading them to questionable sites. I will always wonder if it was the same man. Case file number 832, written by Iridescent Teen. Little boy and puppy aged 20 years and 20 seconds. I live in an apartment complex, and I was walking back from picking up my package at the front office. As I was walking back, about 15 to 20 yards away from me was a small white puppy. Looked kinda like a bull terrier, and a little boy chasing after it. I started walking faster towards them because I was worried that the little boy was lost or something along those lines. Anyways, as I'm walking, the puppy runs around a corner to where I can no longer see it, and the kid chases after it. I then hear a dog crying and whimpering, so I start running, worried that the dog and maybe even the child got hit by a car or injured in some way. As I turn the corner though, there is a full-grown man and an adult, grown white dog. I was shocked, like what the hell happened? I looked around too, and there was no little boy or little white puppy around, just a full-grown man and a full-grown white dog. And no, they didn't just look smaller because it was from a distance. It wasn't that far at all. And it was a literal toddler child and a tiny puppy. It wasn't just a vision thing. I don't know what happened, but I'm still tripping about it. I feel like I should add in. I live in an on-campus college complex meant for freshmen. No children, no full-grown men that I know of. And the only way to have a dog is by filling out an emotional support animal form. But only one dog or pet is allowed. Case file number 833, written by Snow Meow 7, the strangest 13th hole in the world. My husband and I are members of a country club with 2 different courses. The last time we played course A was on the 5-8, and the strangest thing happened on the 13th hole. We were just teeing off when someone from the group behind approached in their cart asking if someone had lost a pitching wedge, PW, in the middle of 11 fairway. I looked at my husband assuming it was him because it certainly wasn't me. I just hit PW off a 12T, a par 3. And while yes, I did hit PW into 11 green, it would be impossible for me to then use my PW on the next hole. I'll also add that I played D1 college golf, and leaving a club behind is just not something I would ever do, let alone in the middle of a fairway or on a tee box had he meant to say otherwise. As such, I say to the guy, "No, it can't be me." And he says, "TaylorMade 790? TaylorMade is a brand, and 790 is one of their lines of irons," and holds out my PW. How is this possible? We never saw that group again for the rest of the round, which is also weird because they'd totally been on our ass. This morning, my husband and I played course A with my dad. As we pulled up to 12T, I started telling him about the unexplained PW happening from last month. He's weirded out. Once in 13 fairway, ready to hit our approaches from around 150 yards away. We can see there's a random ball on the front of the green. We get up there and I say to my dad and husband something to the effect of "free ball for you," because it's gotta be a crappy ball if it got left behind on the green, and the only ball I've played for the last 15 plus years is the Titleist Pro V1. Same as above on brand and model. My dad picks up the ball and rolls it over to my feet after I finish my putt. I'm wondering why he's put some rockflit, golf slang for junky ball, in my general direction and not kept it for himself, because he is known to hit range balls on the course on occasion. I am shocked to see it's actually a fairly new Titleist of some variety. Pro V, he says. Now, at $50 a dozen, a Pro V is not a ball you casually leave on a green. Also, fellow golfers would agree, who would do this in general with any ball? But then I catch a somewhat worn-off orange Sharpie marking over the Pro V1 lettering and pick it up for closer inspection. This ball is my ball. I mark mine with the script SM in orange over the lettering, and it is without a shadow of a doubt that this is a used ball of mine, clear as day right here on the 13th green, a month later, and somehow also passed over by the groups in front of us this morning. I checked my card for that day and I made a par, so I didn't hit one in the water. Even if it was found from a round prior to that, how did it end up here for me? 2 things I did not lose being returned to me on the 13th hole. The first one was weird enough, but now with this today, I have no rational explanation. Also, for clarity, it is golf etiquette to mark your golf ball with a Sharpie, whether with your initials like me or dots or whatever you prefer for easy identification within your group and in the event you lose your ball and need to confirm it's yours. Bonus file, written by Outrageous Term, $23.95, Supernatural Cleaning. I work as a janitor, which means I'm alone and working deep into the night. I clean 3 buildings. The last building that I clean has been giving me the creeps basically ever since I started this job. I've heard voices in the janitor closet closest to me twice, seen a shadow peek out of the men's restroom once, etc. The voices couldn't have been from outside because this building is in an extremely small town in the mountains. There's a field right next to it and a convenience store across the road from it. Plus, by the time I get there, it's roughly 8:30 p.m. Anywho, last Monday I was driving to the building, and the second it came into sight I had a bad feeling. A very bad one. If it wasn't for work I would have left. I parked, clocked in, did alarm stuff, and was getting all my cleaning supplies together. But the second I walked into that building, I felt very unwelcome. The entire time I was cleaning downstairs I could feel something watching me. Like the feeling you get along your shoulders or upper back. I felt this before, but it was intense. I thought it would go away once I got to cleaning upstairs like it usually does, but it just followed me. I didn't even mop or take the trash or recycle out when I was done. I set the alarm as quick as I could and got to my car. I left a message over the supply line to let my bosses know I had a bad feeling and just left the trash in the closet. I couldn't even calm down driving home. I had the light on inside my car for the majority of the ride. I thought I was crazy at first, but I never get this feeling at the other two buildings, nor have I heard voices or seen anything there. It's just this one that's giving me the creeps. For some reason, it's especially heavy in the men's restroom. I'm thinking someone may have died there, and it's right next to the janitor's closet. It's an old building. I don't know how old, but it was around in the 70s, I know that. I just needed to vent this somewhere. It's freaking me out. Case file number 834, written by Visual Tumbleweed 24, The Mythical Ring of Power. This happened a year or so back when my husband and I were living in a rental house throughout the notable world event. A multitude of weird things happened to us there. Tons of things happened in the 18 months that we were renting the house, some of which I've written about in other threads, but this definitely feels the most glitchy. I decided to take off my jewelry one day whilst cleaning the house. I was walking into the bedroom to put my ring in its box on the bedside table, and as I was walking through the door, it dropped out of my hand to the floor. As soon as the thing hit the carpet, it was gone, despite the fact that it landed on the soft carpet and settled in pretty much the exact place that it fell. It felt like as soon as I blinked, it had gone. I looked everywhere, under all the furniture, across every inch of the bedroom, even checking other rooms despite knowing there was no way it had gone that far. After searching for a while, I decided to go back to cleaning, hoping that I would find it along the way and all would be well. I cleaned the house from top to bottom that day, and I could safely say that the ring had completely disappeared. I was disappointed, but there was little that could be done. About 2 months later, we were preparing to move out, and I was doing the final clean, doing pretty much the same routine every week, and went into a sort of robot mode, moving around the house methodically before getting to the bedroom. Furniture from the whole house was already moved out a couple days prior. I was finishing the clean before handing the keys back to the landlord. As soon as I walked through the door, something fell, seemingly out of the sky, and bumped me on the nose before falling on the floor and settling on the carpet. It was the ring, back in the exact spot it had fallen 2 months prior, as though it was mere seconds ago that I had dropped it. I was so perplexed at the time that I picked up the ring and carried on cleaning, convinced that it must have been tangled in my cloth or something. However, the more I talk and think about it, the more I feel like this was a true glitch in the Matrix. Although the rational side of me, my husband mostly, says that there has to be some sort of reasonable explanation. Case file number 835, written by Delve Deeper, The Case of Missing Sunglasses. This happened yesterday and today as well. This morning I was in bed, my alarm went off and I hit snooze. I reached for my e-cig by my bed for that nicotine rush. I always leave it in the same spot, but I couldn't find it. Granted, I was still a bit groggy. I didn't think too much about it and went back to sleep until the snooze alarm went off again. Turned on my lamp, searched again for it. I thought I saw it for a second, gave a double take, and it wasn't there. I thought it was a shadow or something that tricked my mind. I got out of bed, searched again under and around my bed. Couldn't find it. Plugged in my phone and got a new one from my desk. They're the disposable kind. Got ready for the morning, showered and all of that. When I was heading out of my room, I grabbed my charging phone and literally right next to it was my e-cig. I had the new one in my hand, so I knew I didn't get them mixed up. Whatever, weird coincidence, I guess. But yesterday, I was wearing a lot of blue, so I wanted to wear my blue aviators. I have aviators in almost every color, blue, black, red, green, yellow, and chrome. All of them fit nicely in the cases of the door pocket. Think of my car. Yesterday, I couldn't find them and noticed the case was missing. I ran back inside the house and searched around, trying to figure out why or when I would have taken them out, because that's literally something I never do. I couldn't find them. I didn't think too much about it, and knowing myself, I'd find them in a random spot inside the house. But this morning, I was wearing white, black, and red, so I wanted to wear my red aviators. Grabbed the case from the door pocket thing, and noticed that the pocket was full with all my sunglass cases. My blue ones were there. Yesterday, I literally checked every single case in the door pocket. I label the cases because I have so many of them. went through each of them just in case I mixed them up somehow. I really like to match my fit with sunglasses. Not the craziest thing, but pretty weird double coincidences. Bonus file, written by Representative Win965. Mischievous dad pranks us from the afterlife. So, my dad died 5 years ago. It was a freak car accident while he and my older brother were driving home from some sports events they'd gone to. My dad was larger than life in every sense of the word. He was 6 foot 8 inches tall, covered in tattoos, and he had this laugh that I swear you could hear across the country. He and his twin brother, they were identical, played so many pranks on us while growing up that we just sort of got used to it. That has not changed. Only now, dear dad has the final laugh. The night of his funeral, my uncle and I were sitting together in the backyard. Uncle was telling stories about dad and some of their wild teenage years, and I remember so badly wanting to hug my dad. All of a sudden, my uncle and I hear the unmistakable sound of my dad laughing, followed by the back door slamming shut. Uncle and I stared at each other wide-eyed and then burst into laughter, because yeah, that's my dad for you. The door, in case you're wondering, turned out to be locked from the inside. Uncle and I were the only ones home at the time outside of my Rottweiler, Beast, who cannot, to our knowledge, lock deadbolts. And it took us an hour for us to find the spare key. My dad liked to move our spare key around because it makes it harder for robbers to find. He's continued to prank us over the years. Our keys go missing, your phone will start blaring his favorite song at 3 in the morning out of nowhere, or you'll wake up to the sound of my dog growling that distinctive rowdy rumble that he only ever used while playing with my dad. His laughter is always heard, as well as a scent of Old Spice, his favorite cologne. We miss him every day, but he always manages to remind us that he gets the last laugh nowadays. Case file number 836, written by Elcare SN, apartment -201. Both me and my girlfriend were so excited to move in together. It was our first place and we had high hopes. I remember the first time we stepped foot inside the apartment so vividly. I've never been one to believe in the supernatural, not a ghost, energy, spirit person. That all changed in the last year I spent in our apartment. I remember opening the door to the second floor apartments, walking up on a set of stairs, and turning onto the landing. As I reached the top of the second flight, I became instantly lightheaded, as if the air had become thinner and yet heavier at the same time. It was uncomfortable to say the least. I struggled with anxiety, and I've never had the feeling that I did there anywhere else. Normal anxiety doesn't touch the feeling you have when you are in a space that just feels wrong. The first weeks living there, I felt anxious, as if my body was telling me to leave. I felt uncomfortable putting up a mirror in our living room. I had the strangest, unequivocal feeling of being scared to see something I didn't want to see in that mirror. There were constant foul smells and sounds lingering and moving through the space. I would feel drained the moment I stepped foot inside the place at the end of a day. Everything felt wrong. From the moment we moved in, the energy was off. All me and my girlfriend could do was fight with one another. We had never had any animosity in the way we did in that place. I truly have never felt less like myself. We would see things move in the peripherals and hear what sounded like another couple arguing coming from our vents. I have more I could say, but I'm more curious if anyone has had a similar experience. Still processing everything as I just moved out a little over a month ago. Creepy file number 64, written by Jackson1414. The creepy man smiling in the basement. For a bit of context, I work at a gas station in the backwoods of Tennessee, and that's where this happened. Last night when I clocked in at 8, the store was completely dead. I figured it was going to be a pretty easy night because the road this station is on is not the main road. Actually, it used to be, up until about a decade ago when a new freeway was built. This led basically every business that was here to pack up and leave their old building abandoned. Thanks to this, there are a lot of abandoned buildings on the stretch of road that local druggies tend to claim as their own. Anyways, at around 11, I only had an hour left of my shift, and so I figured I should actually get some work done instead of just sitting around and doing nothing. I'm 18, and so I work the shift alone, which is nice because it means I can do pretty much whatever I want. This is normally pretty great because I can do whatever I want so long as I get what I need to get done. I noticed we were almost out of barbecue chips, and so I need to go get them from our storage space, which is for some reason in the basement of the station. I've always hated going down there just because it gives me the creeps. Why the owner decided to store everything down there is beyond my comprehension. I got about halfway down the steps before something fell on the other side of the room, and it sounded like footsteps were coming my way. I sprinted up the stairs and locked the door to the basement, panicking like a madman the entire time. When I got back upstairs, I went behind the counter to the store computer so I could check the security cameras. I flicked over to the one that looked into the basement, and there was this guy just standing there smiling up into the camera. The worst part, he had a look of absolute insanity in his eyes, but he didn't look like the average junkie in the area. He was clean-shaven and dressed in what looked to be jeans and a button-up of some kind. Honestly, if he'd walked into the store, I wouldn't have batted an eye, but because he was down there, and because he was just looking into the camera smiling, it shook me to my core. I called the owner, and at first he was pretty mad I called him in the middle of the night, but once he heard how freaked out I was, his tone changed. He told me he'd be there in 15 minutes, then to just lock the main door to the store and make sure the man didn't go anywhere. I asked if I should call the police, but for some reason he didn't want me to do that just yet. I locked the entrance to the gas station and went back to looking at the man. He was still there, just smiling up at me. About 3 or so minutes later, he stared at me and he walked out of view of the camera. My boss showed up soon after armed with a shotgun, and when I let him in, he immediately went to the basement. I went with him just because I felt safe with there being another person in there and all, but we found nothing. My boss ultimately chased this up to me being tired and hallucinating the man, but I know what I saw. This has me scared crapless as I clock back into work in a few hours, and I'm really dreading it. Checking back in, I'd like to say my shift yesterday went pretty normal, and I have the night off tonight, which is always great. I will say the owner, aka my boss, isn't exactly a model citizen. I don't think he's hiding anything illegal in the basement, but then again, I've also never really gone looking for anything. My boss is also a bit of a jackass when it comes to phones, which is why I didn't get a picture or video of the monitor. His rule is that your phone has to stay in a small drawer behind the counter for your full shift. The first time you're caught with it out, you get a warning, and the second time, you get fired. I've already gotten caught with it once, and I really don't feel like being unemployed, so sorry for not getting pictures. Next, my boss did end up looking at the footage and seeing the guy. He agreed with me that it's creepy and also apologized for saying I just hallucinated it. He still doesn't want to call the cops for some reason, but he did say if it happened again, he would get the police involved. He went back and looked at everything that was captured up until that point, but there were no signs of anyone going down there. Apparently, he asked the other people that worked there if they've ever seen anything down there, but I don't know what they said. Lastly, I know some people thought the story sounded like the Like to Smile movie. I haven't seen that movie yet, so I don't know if it's close to that or not, but if it is, then there's not much I can do. I know personally I'm not making this up, it really happened and it freaked me out. Case file number 837, written by Idule, The Secrets of My Supernatural Phone. For the context, my job is to fix lamps, and my current gig is this large warehouse with over 500 lamps to fix. This specific lamp is a LED card type of lamp, and every LED card needs to be removed and changed. It started the first time a few weeks ago, when I started to lose some of my tools and lamp parts, and later found them somewhere in the warehouse, or in my home where I absolutely did not need them, and I wasn't able to travel with my work pants since I always change them in the working area and leave them there. However, this one that occurred a few days ago messed up my brain. I was coming from the local 7-Eleven store because I was on my lunch break and was normally walking from my car to the warehouse. I literally checked my girlfriend's message while walking. Then I opened the warehouse's door and went in. Then I wanted to put my work gloves to my pocket because I was about to go scroll through more of my phone. I had hands full because I had my phone, or so I thought, and food plus drink that I had bought. Then I go to my break room and poof, the phone is not anywhere. I looked the whole route and thought, what the hell, it can't be on the car since I scrolled it on the outside while walking to the warehouse. Then I went to check the car and the phone wasn't there either. I started to panic since I have the newest iPhone and didn't want to lose it since it cost me half of my paycheck. Then, after using my friend's phone to find my iPhone app, it said that my phone doesn't have a location at all. Then I freaked the hell out and told my coworker that we ain't doing anything before we find the phone. Then he started to look for it in our break room. We also do the lamp fixing there, so it's kinda messy because there are so many new and old parts for those lamps. I went back to the car again and somehow found the phone from the spot I looked earlier. I still can't understand how the heck, since I texted my girlfriend on the way to the warehouse and had the phone in my hand while after going in. Scariest part is that the message that I wrote while walking was sent. So how the heck did my phone teleport back to my car? Case file number 838, written by Cuddles89. Children react to father that isn't home. About 10 minutes ago, I was in the laundry room folding while my son, 4, and daughter, 23 months, watched Disney in the living room. Our front door is propped open to let fresh air in, but the security door is locked. My husband is at a friend's house getting help with a programming project, and I hear this. 4. Daddy, daddy, daddy. 23 months. Daddy, daddy. Husband's voice. Hey guys, where's mommy? 4. She's doing laundry. Husband. Oh, is she folding clothes? 4. Yeah. My 23-month-old is still saying, Daddy, throughout. I finish what I'm folding and walk into the hall to see if husband wants help with dinner. Here's the thing though, he's not in the house. Okay, so maybe he went back outside to get something else from the car. With the front door propped open, the security system doesn't chime when you go in and out. I look out the door. His car isn't here. Me? Hey, 4, where did Daddy go? 4 scrunches up face and looks confused. Maybe he's at work? Me? Weren't you just talking to him? 4. No. I checked the security camera and it didn't catch anything. I feel like it was either a glitch or a parallel universe bled into this one for a moment. But I know my husband was here. Bonus file written by Memphis Bassis, White Creatures in the Dead of Night. I have seen hundreds of these things at night in the woods, in the rural areas around Memphis, starting around 2020. They are tall, humanoid creatures with blacked out eyes, and they move slowly and in strange jerky movements. First time I saw them, I was visiting a veteran friend of mine who was down on his luck about midnight of Thanksgiving Day in 2020. He had been living in a run-down camper vehicle at the edge of the woods on his brother's property. Between his camper and the tree line, there was the remains of an old trailer that had been destroyed by a tornado with a streetlight on top of the pole that was used to run electricity to the destroyed mobile home. On the other side of the pole was approximately 15 yards of a field that an old dirt road that split it in half with tall grass and brush at the edge of the far side of the field, after which the tree line started. I thought they were people hiding at first, as they seemed to be grouping more in the darker areas where the light from the pole was not as bright. I asked my friend about them and he shrugged it off and said that they were always there and they didn't bother him. He also told me that no matter what you did, you couldn't get close to one. So being a combat veteran with 2 deployments under his belt, and my personal firearm from my vehicle, I attempted to approach these things. As I got closer, I noticed they were solid white creatures with solid black eye sockets that moved in a jerky but very slow manner. There had to be 50 or more in that field, down the dirt road, and at the edge of the tree line and beyond. Determined to let something mess around and find out, I continued to walk towards them, and all of a sudden they all looked at me with black, empty-looking sockets and instantly caused me to feel more fear than I have ever remembered having in my life before. I did not approach them that night. I turned away and got out of the area and took my buddy with me to stay a few days at my place. Since that first time I saw them, I have seen them around a dozen times since. I have since tried to run and catch them and failed, because the creature simply disappeared the moment I closed in within 5 to 10 yards and lost direct eye contact for a mere flash. It's like they can phase in and out or something. If you get in close, you can see that the weird jerky movement is parts of them. Arms, legs, heads, disappearing and then reappearing in a different position. I think they disappear anytime they move, so they cannot be seen if they walk. I have pumped 45 5.56mm incendiary rounds from my AR-15 into one without a single shred of evidence of it left behind. These things do make audible noise that can be recorded, but do not show up on video from a cell phone or even on an old analog camcorder with cassette tapes. Animals also see them, however, I have tried to show them to people and only about half of those I have seen them too. I have wondered if I was losing my mind and if anyone else has seen them or tried other experiments with them. I have also searched all over the internet and only found a few cryptid creatures that share one or two similar things to them, but nothing that was close enough for me to be satisfied. The only thing that was really close was the origin of white zombies, sort of. There have been a few people that have told me about this shape-shifting creature, but they don't change or bleed. They seem to be different sizes, some larger, some smaller, and they group up in what I have come to call family clusters, 4 to 5 of them, usually with 2 taller ones and 1 or 2 smaller ones. If you're not aware, you can join the channel now, become a member, helping to support me. You can join for as little as $1 a month. You can also join for $5 a month and gain access to my horror narrations, or you can join on Patreon for the same amount. Regardless, enjoy the stories. Case notes for file 831. Remember that time we teleported? So I read a comment in the thread that could possibly explain it, at least to some degree, in that there's a carbon monoxide leak that was feeding into the cabin of the car, and that could explain the headaches, that could explain the memory loss and behaving weirdly, obviously driving away and then back towards the highway that you came from. It wouldn't entirely explain the fact that there was no time gap. If there was just a memory loss issue going on here or discombobulation from the carbon monoxide poisoning, then presumably there would be a lot of time disparity going on because it would take you time to drive all the way away from the highway, then turn back and drive back. But you said there was a minute gone. And it also doesn't fully explain coming back onto the highway and then the weird feeling in your gut going away, and presumably nothing else happened. If there was a leak, well, it would continue even after this weird anomaly while you're back on the highway, so presumably would happen again. You'd have this weird encounter where you keep going off the highway or just being in weird spots for no reason. And I think there's some validity, especially for other glitches, but I don't quite think it fits here. Unless we combine it with a glitch where there was a gas leak, and that did account for the headache and feeling a bit weird when you got on the highway, and you both died from it, which is actually something that does happen, and you don't even really notice it. Besides the headache and feeling sleepy, you just die, because you don't have enough oxygen going to your brain. You're both transposed to a new universe, and then in that universe, for some reason, you're driving towards the highway from an off-road. I don't know why you'd be coming from that direction, because presumably you both live in the same area, and they just took a back road for some reason in that other universe. That could explain it, I think. Case notes for the creepy file number 63. Videos tell 1,000 words. Right, I mean, I fully understand the rage that would rush through you. At least in the US, technically it's legal to record anyone you want. Well, it depends on the state. Some states do require 2 parties to consent, but in most places, it's just presumed that there's no privacy in public. Of course, in a way that he was doing it, obviously in a provocative way, and also to sell the content apparently online or something. But yeah, the rage I understand, and it's just very dangerous, as you mentioned in the last paragraph. You don't know these people. I mean, they could have weapons. They could obviously they're mentally unstable from the get-go, given what they're doing. So yeah, smashing his phone probably would have ended pretty poorly for you. Just in the future, be careful and try to contain that rage because it can lead to dangerous places. Case notes for file 832. Little boy and puppy, aged 20 years and 20 seconds. So ordinarily, I would say, the little boy and the younger bull terrier probably were just scared off by some older man with a similar looking dog that's just older as well. And they were just, coincidentally around the corner. But as you described the location, being this college freshman campus, where there's no old men allowed with dogs, or young children for that matter, Why would some toddler child be running after a dog anyways? Where are the parents? So does that mean this indeed was some sort of temporal anomaly? We have universal peering, where you're seeing into the alternate universe. We have dimensional shifts, where objects disappear, vanish, go out of phase temporarily. But seeing into the future so far, well, that would only be possible if each universe has its own buffered system, and it's well in advance. Maybe the whole course of the universe, or at least dozens of years ahead, is buffered. Maybe it's not just a few minutes. In that case, you are seeing a buffered version of who they're going to be in the future. Apparently the child grows up to still like dogs, which is good. Dogs are good for us. Get a dog if you don't have one. And now I'm gonna go feed Mr. Ben. The strangest 13th hole in the world. Reading this, it's clear there's no duplicates, so the items that went missing literally did go missing without you noticing, and then reappeared as you needed them. Now, I don't think you dropped them or anything like that. You're an experienced golfer, clearly. They were taken from you by some entity or the universe not allocating memory to storing the information of their existence. There's conceivable methods to this. If the universe is buffered, then the universe has that information stored. It'll know when the items are needed. So I think that's part of the buffering. It's not exactly a replay, it's the information stored in the replay if you're watching a movie or something. Even better in a video game where the game world itself still has to be created and loaded, but it can replay the settings and scenes just by the information given. So it's predictive loading, if that makes sense. And so that way, yeah, it knew where you're going to be, so it just loaded the object there, even though it was taken. Maybe it was taken actually, and the universe wanted to restore it, because it's important, for some reason, that you have that ball and the PW, as you call it. Case notes for file 834, the Mythical Ring of Power. Yeah, this ring was completely out of phase with all of reality. It was still bound by gravity, or that information simply didn't exist and the universe restored it in that given moment as soon as you entered that room, and it fell as it was going to initially, or as it did, because you did say it hit the carpet, so it rewinded time a bit. But it's not really time. I think the information was stored in the universe of where it was supposed to be 3 or 4 seconds prior to what you saw, and then just as you were leaving the home, for probably the last time you'd ever enter that room, it reappeared. It was like some developer or GM in the real world clicked a button and said, okay, yeah, they're leaving now. This is where the ring was 3 or 4 seconds before. Initiate. It just pops in from information that was stored prior. That makes a lot of sense to me. Interesting. So in a nutshell, the ring did fall. It did go on the carpet. For some unknown reason, it glitched out and de-rendered. And then just before you left, the final time, it was made to reappear. I wonder why. Why would anyone care? Why would the developers care if these are entities taking the item? Why do they care that you have the ring back? Do they feel some sort of obligation? Moral obligation? Case notes for file 835. The case of missing sunglasses. So many disappearing object phenomena lately, and I get the impression it has to be one or the other. It's some sort of informational buffer system that's recreating it after phasing out the item for some reason. It might just be the server isn't stable, at least our universe. The other option is some sort of trickster entity or some out-of-phase being, which I guess is the same thing. Maybe these out-of-phase beings are just the echoes that we're talking about, ghosts as most would describe it, and they're able to de-render objects or just phase them into their dimension, which is it's close to ours, but it's not exactly the same. So there's some bleed through if they concentrate, I guess. And it really does make some sense to me. If echoes are out there and they're out of phase with us, then presumably they could bring matter into that phased area, into the same wavelength as them. They're able to interact sometimes with us, so they're able to cross over in that dimensional sense. Why not bring something back with them? Case notes for file 836. The apartment, -201. My impression is that this apartment somehow is tethering a lot of negative energy, probably spirits or echoes as I like to call them. People that lived and died, their essence remains, or a fragment of it. And if they were really bad people, or maybe not necessarily bad in their actions, but they held a lot of thoughts that were very unpleasant and just brought everyone down. Like not just negativity in the sense of malevolence, but even just depression or, have you ever been around that person that is just so heavy on your soul that you can't bear to be there for long? Kind of like soul vampires, I guess is one way to frame it. Anyways, if a lot of people were there and died with that context, I think it can have a leeching effect on anyone else who goes there. You mentioned the air thinning out and yet being heavy at the same time. Almost indescribable to our physical sense, and yet you know it's there. It's a kind of mixing, a blending that shouldn't be happening. I'm glad you got out. Very good call. Case notes for the creepy file number 64. The creepy man smiling from the basement. Boy, this is a really terrifying one to me, especially given that you work there at night alone. At least there's a lock on the basement door, but still, the question I had reading this is, how did the man get in and then get back out? I mean, he didn't go through the door that was locked, you were there, and he didn't sneak in before, during opening hours as your boss reviewed the camera footage and no one went down there. So there must be some sort of secret passageway down there. That's kind of cool and weird at the same time. Maybe your boss is indeed into more outlaw style activities. I don't know. Maybe not drugs, but smuggling or something like that. It could, I mean, that's the only way to explain, in my view, how he got in and out. Unless there's a window that was broken, but you didn't mention that. Assuming if there is a window, it would be locked. So, or maybe I guess he could pick it? Still, doesn't seem to quite add up to me. Unless your boss is into something more than he's letting on. Which also explains the apprehension in contacting the police. Yeah. Or, I mean, it could even be supernatural, but the way your boss reacted is almost like it's somewhat expected. And that's the end of the notes. Kinetic Symphony signing off. Case notes for file 837. The secrets of my supernatural phone. So, yet another expensive item returned. I think we owe a lot of thanks to all these spirits and echoes that seem to be returning objects to us, at least that have significant value. It does seem to be what's happening. The objects are de-rendering from the universe, probably accidentally most of the time, and then reappearing sometimes in the same spot, but I think often not. They're reappearing where they were in time and space when they disappeared or de-rendered. And then these spirits and echoes that maybe are stalking us, I guess, following us, they know who it belongs to and they try to return it. And I think there's even more evidence of this happening because you tried to use your friend's phone to locate yours via the app and it didn't locate it. There was no known phone existing at the time sending a signal. Now, when you did find your phone, it wasn't turned off, it wasn't dead or anything. It really just didn't exist for a certain period of time and then it reappeared. Extreme evidence of the universe losing cohesion. Hopefully just this one, and hopefully very slowly. Let's hope. Case notes for file 838. Children react to father that isn't home. Boy, this is a doozy one. I mean, your children don't remember reacting to their father being home, but you still remember it. So it's not a case of astral projection, which is somewhat common. I've read quite a few stories where a loved one, significant other, friend even, just appears to come home or enter the house, and then apparently they never did, they're still at work or something. But in this case, it's different because the people reacting to it don't remember reacting to it. So it's almost like there was a universal bleed-through effect here. In a different universe, your husband did come home early, your children reacted to that, and you were hearing this, but then when you went to go and check on them, you were no longer receiving stimuli from that universe. You were back in yours. Although again, not back, because I don't think you traveled there, it's just the sensory input. It's like the membranes are very, very thin for a tiny moment, enabling that light and sound wave pressure to travel between universes, so you're receiving that information, but you're not actually there. It's just the universes are maybe almost like tectonic plates crusting against each other. And then as a result, you can get information from that side, and very thinly, and only temporarily. But it does seem to happen quite frequently. Case notes for the bonus file. White creatures in the night. Somewhat strikes me as potentially shadow beings trying to cross over fully, although congregating together is different, so maybe not. Just wild speculation there. Honestly, I've never heard of these kind of white creatures with dead eye sockets, especially grouping together. I've also never heard of white zombies, so that's something to look up. But the fact you describe their limbs as dematerializing in their movements, making them seem jerky, does seem like they're not in cohesion with the universe. They're not exactly ghosts. There's like halfway between ghost and physical form. I don't have much experience dealing with that. This is the first story of its type I've read. And my notes are ending. Kinetic Symphony, signing off. Have a lovely evening, everyone.